Welcome to the Block Party. My name is Seth Kushner. Today, we are joined by a true legend, and you have to be a legend once you're retired. There's no other way to say it. Legendary play-by-play man for the Lightning, Rick Peckham. Welcome to the Block Party.
My pleasure, Seth. Great to be back with you.
Have you ever been in this? We are in Amalie Arena right now. We're in, I call this the basement. Have you ever been in this before? It's just like pretty much a storage room. I'm sure people can see it behind you. You've worked here for how many years? Have you?
24 years. And I've never seen offices in this area of the building and didn't know it existed. And obviously the way the team and the organization has grown in leaps and bounds over the recent years, they needed more office space. And here we are. I like this place. This is pretty cool.
It develops a smell after a while, so that's why we have to hurry up this interview. Rick, I want to know, hockey, big on nicknames. Did you have any nicknames over the years? Did anybody call you like Pex or Ricky P or anything like that with the either the players or the other broadcasters?
Both, actually, and probably worse than that, but we'll just stick with those two. But John Tortorella was big on nicknames, so I was always Peck to him. And my old softball buddies, going back to my first job in Rochester, still stay in touch with those guys from 45 years ago, and it's Ricky P there. So, not too often. My wife's got some pet nicknames, which we can't get into here on the show, but that pretty much covers it.
All right, listen, I got to hit you with the hard-hitting questions right off the bat. Who had better stories over the years? And I know you worked with Chief for longer. Chief or Ingblom?
Well, worked with Chief for 19 years and Brian for 6. So, both great stories. Chief, because he had been here, so he had some great stories from here from before I even got here. So I'd have to go with Chief on that one.
Okay, I thought Chief, he has a lot of great stories because a lot of them involve him not wearing a mask when he would play goalie back in the day, and I always love hearing about that. So,
which explains a lot from what you hear from Chief today.
Yeah, so. Chief says that Chief references a guy that I don't know, it's not from my era, but Chief says he would be very, very handsome if he didn't ever have to play goalie without a helmet. So he's sticking by that. You just were honored. We got Rick Peckham Studios. I made a joke that they wanted to name this Rick Peckham Studio down here, but they decided too classy of a guy for that. What was that like? What was that like for you? I mean, especially to have Yanni Gourde here that night. There was a lot going on, a lot of emotion.
There really was. For the first ever meeting between the Lightning and an expansion team, you couldn't ask for more going on, and just the word surreal comes to mind when it applies to everything that I experienced, my family experienced last, on the Friday night there against Seattle, and from surprises like renaming the broadcast booths for me, had no idea.
You didn't know? Okay.
No, I stepped off the elevator, and there's Phil Esposito in the lobby of the press box, and Dave Andrechuk's there, and Dave Randorf's there, and Dave Michigan's there, and I'm like, something's going on here. What the heck? And, of course, I was too mesmerized to notice this big sign that's covered by a cloth at the time on the side of the wall. And sure enough, it was the sign with my name on it. What an honor. And then, of course, we get out there on the ice, and Mr. Jeff Vinik is detailing the gifts. So generous from Steve Griggs, Mr. Vinik, and the Lightning.
What did you get, by the way? We can talk about it here, Rick. It's fine, Ricky P.
A trip to Pebble Beach to play golf for a foursome, and, I mean, it's just stunning. I've heard from so many people who have volunteered to go on the trip, and I appreciate their efforts, stepping forth and taking one for the team.
Who's one of them? Espo? I know Espo. He's got I think he's got something like a putter or something at his house, maybe. Or is that you? Do you have one at your house?
That was another one of my gifts.
Okay, they got you some more. They got you some golf stuff for your house?
Yeah, I got a putter and just some really, really nice things. I've got a big glass microphone from Sun Sports, and funny thing from that ceremony where Chief is carrying it, the thing weighs about 15 pounds, and we're following the carpet coming onto the ice, and my wife and I get into place, and Chief's kind of behind us, and I had said to my wife, watch, he's going to drop this. And he intentionally half stumbles.
Oh, God. That sounds like Chief.
He was going to drop it, but of course he was in control of everything, and I guess some people are just like, Chief, what are you doing?
Yeah, Chief's a wild man. Yeah, he's a wild card. You never know what he's going to do. When you saw with all the great things you got, and I'm not really a golfer, but I know about Pebble Beach. I've heard about it. It's got to be, isn't it like the top destination for golf probably in America?
I would say the most famous destination, and it's just gorgeous. My family and I have been out to Carmel and Monterey and driven around. So I've driven around Pebble Beach, but obviously had never played it. But it is just so gorgeous. If you get a chance, by all means, go out there and experience it. Just a wonderful area of the country. But golf at Pebble Beach, that's the height of golf enjoyment in the United States right there. So to get that kind of a gift from Mr. Vinnick and the team is just it's astounding.
And you got the beautiful sign, Rick Peckham Studios. It's plural, studios. Did you get? Is it home and away? That's for Rick Peckham or what? Are they just calling it studios?
I guess all the broadcast booths.
Look at that. Not just one. You got a bunch.
And on top of that, during the dedication, the studios are numbered, or the booths are numbered. And Phil Esposito made a point to Dave Randorf. He's saying, look, booth number 1 is radio. Booth number 2 is TV. So we all had a good laugh about that. As Espo, king of the moment, he'll come up with something.
I want to know, Rick, did you get any, I know it's different with, the internet and everything back when you first started, but did you get any negative feedback right when you started with the Lightning? Because I know Dave Randorf got a lot, and it was, of course, people were just upset with Dave because he wasn't you. People think that Dave was rooting for the other team to win. Was there anything when you first joined the Lightning, or any critiques over the years that people gave you?
Well, when I came in, and the first year I called the Lightning games was the last year at the Thunderdome, 95-96. It was the first year the team made the playoffs, so there was a lot of positivity going on there compared to the first 3 years of an expansion team that really didn't have a sniff at the playoffs prior to that. So there was a lot of stuff to get excited about, which I think certainly worked in my favor. I think also social media did not exist at that point. And so I didn't get really any negative feedback that I could sense at that point, because you didn't have such an intimate and instant way to relate to fans and them to you on how things were going. John Kelly is an outstanding broadcaster, and he was the guy who preceded me as the TV voice. Larry Hirsch was still doing the radio. And, John's gone on he left to go to Colorado when the Nordiques had just moved to Colorado, and they ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year. And then now to St. Louis, he's been there, pretty much his hometown. But I can't really recall a lot of negative feedback, more like, here's the new guy in town kind of thing, and you really don't know how people are feeling.
Did you give any advice to Dave Randorf, before he came in and took over?
Well, all I told Dave was, welcome to Tampa Bay. You're going to love it here. The team and the network are going to treat you tremendously, and I think they certainly have. And you're working with a guy like Brian Engblom, who's just top of the list in terms of color guys and his abilities. And the fan base, he was coming in and starting to call a team that was defending the first Stanley Cup championship. And the fan base is just going wild. The market's going wild for the Lightning. So it was a good time to step in. Really nothing in regards to, how you handle this or handle that. He's a pro. He's been at this for a long, long time. He doesn't need my advice for that.
Yeah, Dave Randorf, he got crushed, though. I think the Lightning lost to the Panthers last year. Was it Spencer Knight? Was that the one that had a really good game? And people thought that Dave Randorf was rooting for Spencer Knight to win, but it was more of the story that he was getting caught up in, that this rookie was playing so well against the Lightning. And there was just so many people that were blaming the Lightning loss on Dave Randorf. It was, wow. Absolutely insane. You're not on Twitter, are you?
No.
All right, good. Stay that way. So I want to know, were you nervous? You just called the Nashville game, right? A week or so ago. Yes. Were you nervous coming out of retirement?
Yes. And the other half of that would be I didn't have a whole lot of time to get nervous. It was really a bizarre set of circumstances. My family and I were in the process of flying up to Toronto on Sunday, the 14th of November. And I get a text from Bill Wickett, who, of course, legendary here with his years with the Lightning and now with Nashville. And Pete Weber, who's been a good friend of mine, we go back 40 years, back to Rochester for me, and he was in Buffalo at the time. And I find out he's sick, had to leave the game on Saturday night, wasn't traveling to do their game on Tuesday night the 16th. Is there any way you could fill in? I'm like, wow, this is just hitting me over the head. And knowing that I couldn't really get to any preparation until the day of the game because Monday was filled with a lot of activity and luncheons and so forth. And so I said, yes. I mean, Pete's down and out. I got to step in and help him out. So
how much time would you have needed, like in a perfect world, how much time would you have liked to kind of prep and get ready, to call that game?
Probably an extra day.
Okay.
But, I had not really watched Nashville much on TV to that point of the season. I'd seen only a couple of Leaf games, mainly because they were, on NHL Network or something, and I stayed with it. And I'm looking at Michael Bunting, who had been in Arizona, but now he's a new face with the Leafs. There's 3 or 4 guys in both those teams that I really didn't know much or anything about. So I just kind of concentrated on that. And then worked with Hal Gill, the former defenseman. Played for so many teams, 14 years in the league. He's the color guy in radio. And he was just tremendous to work with. So he actually got us to the commercial break, the first 3 breaks, because on TV you're used to having a stats guy, and he makes sure that he's got all the penalties written down and the goals and assists and all that. Don't have a stats guy on radio. So the first 3 penalties happened on media breaks. So I'm writing down quickly writing down the penalty, trying to make sure I got that down and not noticing that the crew's coming on the ice to shovel the snow. And Hal's like, I think we better go to break. And so once we got past those, I think it all went pretty well, I guess.
Did you get like the itch back, or you haven't had it since you left? Like you're totally content with the career that you had?
Yeah, I'm very content with what I'm doing now. I mean, for a one night only, that was fine, and helping out friends in that situation was really the paramount focus of the whole endeavor there. So, I'm happy doing what I'm doing now, which is not really at the rink every day, and my schedule is myself.
So what are you doing? I know, like, when people retire, a lot of people freak out because they go, "What am I going to do?" It seems like you're playing a lot of golf. What's a normal day like for you? You still watching the Lightning and keeping up? How much is hockey a part of your life? I just asked you 6 questions in one, but just take me through a Rick Peckham retirement day.
Well, let's see how my memory's doing here. I'll go back through 1 through 6, Seth. And,
no, just actually pick whatever one you like the most here, Rick. I got you got golf to play today, I'm sure.
Getting some clubs worked on. So
Yeah.
an off day for playing, but still not stepping totally away from golf. But nevertheless, I try to play 2 to 3 times a week. And believe it or not, we're on radio, fortunately, and in a podcast, so you can't see me. But I actually try to get to the gym a couple times a week, too. But it's more time to spend with my wife, who had to be on her own. It's really sunk in how much she was on her own when, like, a game day here is a 15-hour day for me. And it's get up, do some prep in the morning, go to the skate, get ready for the game that night, come back home, do some more studying, get back down to the rink. You do the game. By the time you get home, it's like 14, 15 hours. And so I'm not spending any time with her. Now, when we go on the road for 10 or 11 days, she's on her own there. Pretty amazing how she handled all that with our boys, who are now grown. But through this whole experience in Tampa, when we came here, they were 4 and 2 years old. So
Wow.
A lot of responsibility, and I'm really understanding that better now that I'm spending more time at home and more with her and more aware of her activities and trying to jump in and do stuff. But generally, it's just more time. Your schedule's free to, hey, somebody called, let's do this. And, hey, let's go here. We're going to spend the day at Busch Gardens. You're wide open. You can do that. And I really enjoy that. I just think that when you get to 66, which is where I'm at, you realize that you've done everything you can do. And it's time to just make sure that, I don't know if you call it smelling the roses or whatever, but It's trying to get those other experiences and spending more time with family and playing golf on the weekend with my son who lives here and things like that. It's trying to take advantage of the time that you have, and you still have moving parts. Let's get out there and try to make the most of it.
This is one of the moving parts. This is like, hey, Rick, can you please change your schedule up today and come do this interview? Rick, have there been what players over the years have made an impact on you?
That's a great question, because I don't know if you or JP came up with that, but no. JP,
he feeds me everything, so he's the brains behind the operation.
I'm just kidding, but
I'm the looks.
That's a fabulous question, because Chief and I used to kid ourselves back in the early 2000s when things weren't so good around here, and the wraparound studio didn't exist. In fact, there were very few human beings in this building, paying customers or otherwise.
Was that the Oren Koulis era?
No. That was the early Palace Sports.
Okay.
The back-to-back 54 loss seasons and so forth. And the Lightning were going through players like crazy. I think we had 52 one year and close to that the other 2 years until things started to settle down in 2002. And we used to joke that if you want to meet people, you should be with the Tampa Bay Lightning, because players were coming in and out of here. And I'd gone through the same thing in Hartford, a lot of years like that and a lot of turnover. You got to meet so many people. And what hockey players are known for, and it's not a cliche, they really are such nice people across the board. And so it's difficult to pick out particular ones. But certainly being here from the start of Vinny Lecavalier's career, that was very special. I mean, he was really the first superstar in many ways. Up until that point, it was an expansion team where you were just trying to grab guys who you thought could help, and maybe it worked out and maybe it didn't. Vinny, you could build around Vinny. And to be here from the start of that was very, very special. I think just the whole crew from the team that won the Cup in 2004. In fact, Brad Richards and Freddie Modine were in the building the other night when I was honored, so it was great to visit with them. And Freddie in particular, just a fabulous guy, always one of my favorite players throughout the years. And you get to the era where, when you think back, and I don't know how far back you go, Seth, with following the Lightning. If you go back to, 2010, 2011, they had that great run, but it was very early in the Jeff Vinik, Steve Yzerman, Steve Griggs tenure. At one time, you had Vinny Lecavalier, Marty St. Louis, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman.
Yep.
All in the lineup at the same time. You think back to that, that's pretty special. Now, Stammer and Hetty were very young and, making mistakes and learning from them and becoming the superstars they are today. But you go back to that era and those players, just fantastic people. And then, of course, I know most of the current edition. It was kind of weird that when things stopped back in March of 2020, Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman had just come on board, like maybe 10 days before. So you really didn't get a chance to know them or Zach Bogosian, also an addition at that time. But, seeing Yanni Gord become what he's become from the depths of professional hockey
yeah.
and going back to the Cow Palace in San Francisco, the original home of the San Jose Sharks, and it should have been torn down then. Now, considering they have a pro hockey team playing there, 30 years later is amazing.
It's funny you bring up the intersection of the Stamkos, Hedman, and Vinny and Marty era, because I had Ryan Malone on the block party who was in that, and just talking to those guys about, what it was like playing with, the future and the current, those are some of the all-time great Lightning players. So to be a part of that, yeah, some of those guys, that's just really special.
Yeah, it really is. I remember an early Victor Hedman, and to this day, I think he's the same way. He always really impressed me, not so much with the talent. I mean, you expected that from the second overall pick, but he was always eager to learn. always extremely positive. And, it was a tough time the first couple of years. He had Matthias Olin here to help him out. But playing defense and having that kind of pressure on you, I can't think of too many defensemen who've come into the NHL and figured it out so quickly. But, Victor was he never got down, never got discouraged, always eager to learn, and that will always stay with me.
Man, I agree. Now, I want to know, Rick, do you have a special parking spot? When there was the pandemic, when it was going on here, I was able to park in Dave Andriachuk's spot. It was glorious.
Wow.
I saw all the other names that get to park back there. I don't want to call them out, but like Espo and all the other guys. Where did they have you park today? They gave you a bunch of gifts, clubs, everything, Rick Peckham Studios. But what about the parking spot? I had to park at the aquarium today, Rick, and walk. I mean, it's not easy being an employee here.
Now, I've been getting down here only on game nights, and you figure the traffic is just related to game nights. It's going to be another sellout crowd. That's just the way it is. And, now I'm down here in the morning and construction all over the place. They're working so hard to get everything moving here in Water Street and that project. But I parked behind the building in the compound where Dave Andriachuk and Phil can park.
Okay.
But Daryl helped me out there in the lot and got a spot toward the end. And, I'm very happy with it. It's that compound has its own history in terms of how that's gone through the years.
Really?
Yes.
Take us through the compound. The compound is, how do we describe it? That's where all the players park, right? And everybody walk. That's where they walk in. When you guys see the photo shoots of the players walking into the game, that's where it's happening. It's where pretty much, guys like me can't get in unless for some reason there's a pandemic and I can use Andriachuk's spot.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the people that run the lot out there, the security folks, do a fabulous job because the crush to get a spot in there, especially now with all the construction going on, and you're talking about, having to park blocks away and so forth. It's a thankless job for sure, but it's been interesting to see that evolve over the years. It's kind of like where the Marriott the JW Marriott sits now, and I'm sure there's a lot of fans who are listening in who remember when that was called the grassy knoll. There was no pavement out there, and you entered from Florida Avenue and just, rumbled over the hills and grass and dirt and dust and everything else, parked your car and came into the game. And if it rained, wow. Then they started to pave half of it and then pave the whole thing. And then the next thing you know, here comes the JW Marriott, and it's just a memory.
Yeah, things have definitely changed down here.
Yes.
So in your last season, when you announced that you were going to retire, that's when the shutdown happened, the pandemic. I actually spoke to you, about that. Did you think that it was ever going to come back? Did you think hockey was going to come back that year? Or did you think you had called your last game?
I think a lot of us, when the pandemic was hitting, February, you were aware of it, got into March, and there's rumblings in the media that, wow, pro sports is going to stop. And we're like, really? I don't know about that. But, very few people had a handle on how serious the situation was becoming. And then it stopped, and then you're like, wow, the first couple of weeks, well, it'll be a few weeks, maybe 6 weeks, we'll be back at it. And then you realize, no, it's not going to be ending anytime soon.
That's what Espo thought. I talked to Espo. He's like, we'll be back playing by June, no problem. So he was a few months off on the prediction, but he was on the right track.
And I didn't know what to think. I was like, did I really, by accident, call my last game and not really pay attention to that particular fact? The whole world was going through this. So, but you just started to, look for signs and announcements, any bits of news that you could get that the NHL was considering a restart in July and looks like it may happen, and you're just hoping, and then it finally happened. I really thought strongly based on, kind of how the other sports were going. Hockey seemed to, look out an extra month or so and say, look, we're not going to even try to start June 1st and end up disappointing people. We're going to shoot for a little later and see where things stand and give us more time to prepare and get schedules going and what's the format going to be and all that stuff. I think they really took a measured approach to a situation that no one in the world could figure out, and they did an excellent job with it. I had confidence from what I was reading from them in that they would figure out a way to get it done, and of course they did.
And you called the Columbus series?
Yes, that was my last series.
And what the 5 overtime game? What was that like for you? How many times did you have to go to the bathroom?
Well, we didn't have much of an opportunity because you get to overtime, in the playoffs like that. They go pretty quick. It's just a straight 15 minutes. So that really wasn't a concern. But the fact that we were calling it off the monitor, I was upstairs in the Valley Sports booth. Brian was next door because we had the distancing protocols and so forth in the visitors TV booth. And so it's not like we were in the arena and had to deal with, everybody trying to get here or there during the intermissions. So it actually wasn't much of a challenge from that standpoint. But just the fact that you just couldn't believe it was going to go another period. And here's another period. And the periods are going faster and faster. There's fewer stoppages, and it really was flying by. Before you knew it, you were into the 5th overtime.
Is that the longest game that you've ever called or been a part of?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Gotta be. It's gotta be. Rick, so there was one more question that I wanted to ask you. Now that you're retired, I feel like we can talk about it. We can dish the dirt. Who had the worst hospitality on the road? When you would go out and visit these other teams, just tell us. Some of the old school guys I talked to, I know there's places now, I don't know, where the Madison Square Garden or whatever, it's all kinds of snacks and candy, and they really do it up right. Is there a place you would go where you're like, what? This is it? This is all we get?
Boy, you have just managed to stump me again here. Another great question.
It's okay if there's not. I just like to. I don't want to hear about the good ones. I mean, unless there's one where you go. All right, where was somewhere you really enjoyed going on the road?
Well, from a broadcast standpoint, Chicago Stadium, the Odd, and Buffalo were the 2 best locations. But the thing about that, I mean, there was no worry about going back for snacks or something between periods because you were trapped basically. In what they called a bucket, which was just an extension off the upper deck, where they put 2 game cameras in there and a table, and you and your partner sat there, and they would try to shoot you on camera, and it's like you were 6 people in a phone booth or something like that.
Oh man!
But from the standpoint of calling the game, you could referee the game from there. It really was that perfect. So there's that angle of it, which I think is the most important angle. Really hard to. I don't really leave the booth that much because I found in the last few years that it was important to me to know what Paul Kennedy and Adam Hall, Dave Andrechuk, the chief, were saying during the intermissions, and we could play off that in the next period. And I thought that made for better television, where the show seemed to be just one show, and it wasn't a case of Paul saying, what do the Lightning need to do in the second period? And Dave Andrechuk says, well, they need to get more shots. And then Brian and I come back, and we're basically saying the same thing, and it's very obvious, wow, you should have listened in the intermission. It just didn't seem to be good television to do it that way and chance that you could turn around and repeat exactly what was just said. So I really didn't leave the booth too much.
That's some good behind-the-scenes stuff. I like that. A real man of his craft here. Wanted to know what was going on with everybody. Well, let me ask you this then, Rick. This is from the people. They wanted to know. Where were you the last 2 boat parades? I haven't seen any pictures of you. I don't know if you were on a boat, if you were in the water. I don't know what was going on. What were your whereabouts for at least the first parade?
Well, the first parade, I was assigned to do interviews of the players coming off the boats at Rick's on the River.
What an assignment! You didn't know what an assignment that was going to be, before it happened, did you?
Now, looking back on it, I should have had the 12 beers before the interviews that the players all had, and then we probably could have communicated a lot better.
Did you talk to anybody? Did you get any interviews? Or at that point, were they saying, you don't talk to any of these players, it's not going to be good?
Well, remember, we had those distancing protocols in place too. So, it would be me at one end of the room and you at the other end of the room doing this podcast kind of thing, right? So that was certainly a deterrent, because the guys just are coming off the boat. The people at Rick's on the River have prepared a little meal for them. They're anxious to get in there with their families and all that stuff. Best interview was Jeff Vinik, for sure. And it was a interview that no one will forget if they saw it, because that's where the relationship between Mr. Vinik and Nikita Kucherov began to blossom. Mm-hmm. Where I'm talking to Mr. Vinik facing Jeff, and up from behind comes Cooch with a Heineken beer in his hand and, wraps his arm around from behind. And I don't know if he kissed Jeff or not.
It was. I think they touched cheeks. It was close. Yeah,
it was close. And then, of course, anybody who saw the celebration at Raymond James saw the rest of that, which was very, very entertaining. So that's what would stand out from 2020. 2021, I was invited at the last minute to join some suite holders and sponsors on one of the Starship cruise boats, and so that was just phenomenal. And
so you were in it. You were in the parade for this one.
Yeah, basically, yes.
And you got to party? Did you get to, have a couple and really get to, take it all in since you didn't have to work?
Yeah, definitely. And, we ended up fortunately under a tent when the storms hit.
Oh, good. Good for you. We weren't. We had to hide under a truck like it was the end of the world, Walking Dead. Like we're hiding under tires and stuff just to find shelter.
It sure looked like the end of the world, didn't it?
Boy, it did.
I show people my video of when the storm hit, and they're like, wow. And they actually tried to do something after that.
We do too. We have a video where we were going to go out and interview people that were just in the audience, and we were all ready. Everybody was there, and right when we started to go out, that's when just all hell broke loose, and we're standing under something. But the rain, it's coming in sideways.
Yeah.
It's the sideways rain, and then it looked like a hurricane was happening. And we experience thunderstorms all the time in Florida, but this was just a next level situation on the day of the parade.
Yeah, and how perfect. I don't recall a lot of lightning striking, but like you said, sideways rain and wind blowing and just pouring, and everybody's drenched and just flooded out the whole celebration at the park. But it might have been an appropriate end. And years from now, we look back and say, well, they are the lightning, and this is how it ended.
That's what people were saying. They're like, oh, it's a message, or it means something that it's lightning. And when the lightning went, I go, no, it's not, because if this lightning hits me, then what does that mean? That means I'm dead, So I wasn't all about this. I wasn't all about the sign, Rick, but I appreciate that you got to party. Thank you so much for coming by the block party. Great to talk to you. Congrats. And I will say this. I know you mentioned that you needed some pledge to go dust off your sign upstairs. I'll take care of that for you.
You sure?
I'll dust it. I'm here once a week. I'll dust it for you. I'll take care of it, and I'll send you a picture just so you know it's being taken care of. We saved the graffiti and everything for Dave Andrechuk's statue, so I won't ever run that with pledge or a rag or anything. But I'll make sure that your sign stays pristine for years to come.
Well, I'm glad there's no picture up there, because I could just imagine goatees and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
knowing the members of the NHL Broadcasters Association,
I'm not going to let that happen, Peck.
Well, thank you, Seth.
Thank you very much, Rick.